Hello, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to another film study with 11warriors.com. Of course, I am Kyle Jones. Today, we are talking about the game that everyone's thinking about, right? We are talking about the game that's on everyone in the state of Ohio's mind, and that, of course, is the win over Rutgers, right? That's what everyone came here today to talk about, to think about. It's clearly what's been keeping you up at night. Just how did Ryan Day and the Buckeyes take off Greg Schiano and the Scarlet Knights? Now, of course, that is not the top of mind. I know you're saying stop screwing around. What are we doing here? Of course, we're going to talk about the Michigan game this weekend. We're not going to dive in too deep into what we can expect on both sides of the ball, but I think it's important to look at the Rutgers game through that lens, right? We're going to dive into the film, see what we saw from the Buckeyes on both sides of the ball, specifically in the Buckeye run game, as well from a pass defense perspective, as well as some of the blitz packages we saw. Why are we looking at those specifically? One, they were highlighted, of course, against the Scarlet Knights in that big victory, but also I think those are going to be some keys to this victory that could come for Ohio State on Saturday. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself here. If Ohio State's going to win, they're going to need to win those three phases. So we're going to start by talking about the Buckeye offense, and as they face Wink Martindale and the Michigan defense. Martindale, of course, came from the NFL, had a lot of success at that level, known for his pressure packages. Really, when he came to Michigan, though, of course, last year, adopted a lot of what Jesse Minter had left behind, which, of course, took what Mike McDonald had left behind. It's much more, zone-heavy schemes, a lot of different coverage structures on the back end. But now we've seen more this year with Martindale in year two, leaning a little bit more heavily on man coverage. However, I think man coverage is a tenuous ask, assuming, of course, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate play. We're not going to talk too much about that, but I want to look a little bit at the Buckeye passing game, see what worked for Ohio State against Rutgers. How did Max Clare get so wide open? Because does that lead us to anything we can see next or this coming Saturday? Now, as we dive into the film here, what we're going to look at is this is a great concept where we can see James Peoples is going to come in motion. Now, there's two running backs in this concept, and they had actually run a jet sweep from this same look earlier in the game. Peoples comes across C.J. Donaldson's leading him on a jet sweep, but is actually a play-action pass. You're going to see Donaldson take off on a wheel route. You're going to have a post from Brandon Innes over the middle, but what you can see is the movement at the second level. The linebackers from Rutgers, they've already been set up because they've run this play once, and that's going to leave the linebacker who's got Max Clare in that zone, grasping for air. Clare is going to delay and then release out across. Now, there is pressure in Sain's face. He's able to maintain his composure and just drop a little lollipop. Once he does, though, look at all the open space. Now, when you run into the boundary like that and you've already established the run, it makes it a lot easier to throw back. And that's a lot of what led to Clare's success on Saturday. Obviously, a career day, at least in terms of his Ohio State career. Now, we see a lot of pre-snap motion ahead of time. You see Clare move over. You see Peoples move over right now as we look from the end zone view, right? And you can see movement, which is helping to identify this is some man looks. You can see this might be man coverage from Rutgers. You see a pressed up safety. Now, the key, of course, watch Clare. He sells the block really well, right? He's selling the block to make it look like he's pinning the receiver inside or pinning the defensive end inside. Might even be a safety, I think, from there. But after he sells it, he's going to then release. But number 8, tough break. Your job is to kind of wall off anything coming backside, and he gets caught out of position. Before, Clare's even cleared him, you can see Sain already winding up to throw. Now he's got a guy in his face. At least they protected against the bootleg. But again, this is a great example of Ohio State just scheming open the guy that they needed to scheme open this week. Obviously, no Smith, no Tate. That's what they need to do, at least in the passing game. Now, as we think about the passing game this weekend, a lot changes when you bring back 4 and 17, assuming they're both healthy and both on the field. A tenuous ask, in my opinion, if Wink Martindale is going to lean on man coverage as much as he has. But I think what's important to note is even if they don't lean into man coverage, you can really expect, because we've seen it the last few years from Michigan, a lot of too high looks. Now, the key to too high looks is, of course, being able to contain the run with two safeties out, and you're essentially down a defender in terms of all the gaps they play. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But what's important to know about this is execution in the run game is going to be so critical for Ohio State. We just saw in the previous example what happens when you effectively set up the run prior, and that's allowing the defense to move laterally as in terms of, and not just vertically in terms of taking away the deep ball, getting them cover all 53 yards, the width of the field. and Ohio State's going to have to execute in the run game. Now, we've talked a lot in this space about their lack of execution, or the inconsistency, I should say, in execution up front. That improved mightily this week. It was a big step forward for the Ohio State run game. Now, what am I talking about? Let's look at one example here. This was the first touchdown of the game. It's a counter play. We've seen them struggle with counter so much. Now, they bring Claire in motion essentially to be the first guy to set the edge, and that actually kind of messes up the defensive front a little bit. But you're going to have two pullers, Montgomery and Bennett Christian. We've got them highlighted here. They're going to lead and kick, right? You're going to see Montgomery does a great job. He's had some struggle pulling this year, but he does a really great job on this play because he's going to take off here in a second. And his job is to hit the first color. And the first color is that unblocked end. You can see Phil Daniels is leaving that end unblocked. Phil Daniels is going to work to the second level to one of the linebackers. He's going to help Shabola because he's expecting Montgomery to take on that end. Now, Claire is going to help out and chip the corner there, right? He's the end guy on the line. So Claire is going to help there. Montgomery does a great job of pinning this guy inside. Now, he slants and he's trying to crash and take away the inside shoulder of the puller. That's what they're taught. But Montgomery does a great job getting his hips around. Meanwhile, Jackson sees this action in front of him. He can see Claire's got that edge. He's got Montgomery pinning him. And now Bennett Christian is actually going to lead him up through the hole. Now, Christian does a great job of recognizing, okay, the linebacker's my guy. I've got to seal this linebacker. And Jackson isn't going too fast. I think that's been an issue we've seen with the backs this year as they run up the backs of the block before the blocks can be established. He does a good job of staying patient. He's not taking off in a full-on sprint. He's not holding the turbo button the second he gets the handoff right. He waits for the hole to establish itself, and then he's able to make a guy miss in the open field. So great execution on a play they've kind of struggled with all year in terms of counter. Another one, this is a stretch play. This is an outside zone play, so no pullers on this one. Another example of doing much better. Montgomery and Hinsman here, they're double teaming the nose tackle here. This is plays meant to hit outside on the outside leg of the tackle, Sarabold. But you can see Montgomery making contact, but he's got his eyes on 4. He's not going to let go until he's confident 75 is going to get turned around. Now, Hinsman does a great job of turning his hips. Meanwhile, Sarabold on the outside at tackle, he also does a great job of turning his hips to the outside. Like I said, the play is meant to hit outside his outside foot, right? He's got to get his butt in the hole and essentially be in between where the back's going and where the defender is. He does a nice job of moving his feet while staying engaged and creating that lane. And finally, we can see these two tight ends, Thurman and Nate Roberts, get up to the second level. And also you can kind of see in the middle there, Montgomery's done a nice job of working up to that middle linebacker. This is hat on a hat. Now, again, Rutgers not the best defensive line, not the best defensive front in football, but just really clean execution. You can't blame Ohio State for being better, but you can be happy that they succeed and that they're executing well. So that leads to this big run on the outside. Again, nice execution that we saw from Ohio State, but something we've been lacking in recent weeks, something you want to see ahead of the Michigan game. Now, this is a wrinkle we saw here, right? Look at this nasty split from Max Clare. He's in a tight end. I've been waiting for Ohio State to show some of these spread looks and running from them. We get in this instance. Now, he splits out in this nasty split, right? He's not next to the tackle, and that pulls the linebacker outside of the box a little bit, and that's going to be important. This is a new concept. We haven't really seen it from Ohio State much this year, but this is a simple one-back power, and by that we mean we've got one puller. The guard is going to pull around, and that end who's going to be unblocked until Montgomery pulls and kicks him out of the way, right? You can see Shabola in front of him helping Daniels with 55, the tackle. Shabola's going to work to 6, but we'll get to him in a second. The important block is going to be Montgomery, who pins that guy inside. Now you can look at Shabola. Shabola's got up to the linebacker, right? I think most of the time we would expect, okay, well, Shabola's, he might not let 6, or he's probably not going to let 6 get off the hook here. 6 is going to be able to make this tackle based off of the cut that Bo Jackson makes. But it's a great effort, much improved from Shabola here. It's just going to stay engaged and drive that linebacker back. Again, good blocking on the outside from Claire, who continues to improve week over week. Good push. They finish the play well. This is the kind of effort that you need to see from Ohio State as they get ready for a great run defense. Why do I say that? Because despite everything we've seen from Michigan over the last couple of years in terms of the roster turnover, the change in coaching, all the changes, fill in the blank with what has changed for them. One thing has stayed consistent, and that is the play of the defensive front. Throughout this entire streak of Ohio State losing, this big game on Saturday, one place that Michigan has consistently played well is that defensive front. This year is no different. They do not necessarily have the Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, those clear first rounders at defensive tackle. However, you watch the film and you can still see a lot of talent, a lot of great skill on display in that defensive front. And that's going to be a huge challenge for the Ohio State offensive line. As we just showed, the execution has improved, albeit against a far lesser opponent than what they're going to see on Saturday. But what do I mean by that? It's a different look this year. Now, the defensive tackles, if we turn on the tape here against Northwestern, the defensive tackles are not names. So you can see Rashawn Benny here, number 26 is the guy I want to highlight because the play we're showing, it's a simple trap play. It's similar to the one we just showed. But this guard right here, he's going to go kick out the end, Barham, right? Now, the play is meant to hit outside on the outside leg of the tackle. They're trying to block down that side, and 60, the guard here, is just going to kick out the end, who's an undersized end. He's really more of an outside linebacker. But the guy who makes this play is 26, Benny, because he slants, as that guy pulls, he slants across the face of the center, right? The guard pulls is what we call a run stunt, where he essentially recognizes, oh, the guy in front of me is pulling. That means the play is going that way. That means whatever gap I had to begin with, I'm just going to leave, and I'm going to swim over. And that creates chaos. Meanwhile, on the far side, you're going to see Barham, instead of trying to set the edge and try to hold his ground against a guy who outweighs him by 50, 60 pounds, he's actually going to knife inside and try to disrupt this this pulling guard. He's going to start out outside, almost like a basketball player, juke him with a crossover and hit the inside shoulder. Why? Because 30's coming from behind him. Now, Barham comes inside, makes the blocker miss, and then because Benny has beaten with that slant we just showed, right? He beat the center. Now there's three guys to the backside, are all worried about the penetration from 25. That leaves the other tackle one-on-one, leaves Barham, who's already beaten his guy. And oh, by the way, you got a safety coming down to help. This is excellent scheme. This is excellently taught, excellent execution here from Michigan. These are the types of things that Ohio State should expect. This is not just simply going to be Mason Graham's unblockable. What are we going to do? Now, that said, I think it's going to help Ohio State to try to hit the edges outside. We saw them hit that outside zone, the second scheme we showed, right? One of the other parts of the run game that was really successful for Ohio State, unlike my speech, against Rutgers, was hitting the outside in the run game. Aiming outside the tackles, just moving the point of attack out on the edges. I think that's a place that you're going to see them try to attack yet again against Michigan. The reason being also, as you try to hit those alleyways, you're taking pass defenders out of their pass responsibilities. You're putting them in conflict. Now, how do they do that? We saw that this week with a pin and pull toss concept. We're going to show a couple versions of both of which were successful, and it's something that you might see this Saturday against Michigan. Here's what I'm talking about. Early in the game, you got this bunch formation up to the top, right? You got this bunch formation with a bunch of tight ends, and we can see right as the ball is snapped, you're going to see Daniels and Max Clare just pull outside. That's all they're doing. They're pulling out to the edge, and then you're going to have a nice little toss. The back's already on the same side. Usually in the shotgun, you try to line up and expect the run to go opposite side where the back lines up. Bo Jackson takes the pitch, gets some good blocking, almost gets in. Nice tackle at the goal line, but still a big gain. Now, we watch from the end zone view here. You can see a little bit more clearly how this gaps out. You've got 89, 85, they're going to pin their guy down, those tight ends, and then Clare and Daniels are going to pull around, and that's going to put them one-on-one against defensive backs. Now, as long as you have the athleticism in the open field to engage with those guys, clearly those pullers have the advantage. But the other clear guy who I want to highlight here is Shabola, who does an excellent job of getting up to the next level. Now, he makes sure that, Hinsman's got his guy, but he doesn't have to worry too much, right? They're trying to hit the edge. They can bet that Jackson get there. Now, Shabola gets right up to the middle linebacker and seals him. Again, Daniels does a nice job getting up to the second level, getting a piece of this safety. He doesn't necessarily engage the whole way. Clare does a great job pushing his man out to the end zone, to the sideline. And there's a pretty clear alleyway here for Bo Jackson. A backside player just comes in time to take him down right before the goal line. But again, a big gain. Now we see the same concept later in the game, just flip to the left side. This time you're going to see Clare and Saravel, the left tackle, pull, but everything else is exactly the same, right? It's a short yardage play. Rutgers is in a similar set. There's no deep safeties here, right? And that's helpful because you're going to get a block from Clare, a block from Saravel, and this time Bo Jackson's not going to be denied. He makes sure he runs to the tackle and finishes the play, right? Celebration from the tight ends. But again, we watch it on this from the end zone view. You can see a lot more clearly the importance of those first two tight ends, right? You're going to see Christian and Kazmarek. They're going to pin the end and that outside linebacker 7. They're going to do a great job of just pinning them inside. And no matter what happens with the defensive tackles, it's a foot race, right? So no matter how good your tackles are, even if they go unblocked, it's a foot race between them and your running back. That's a race that Ohio State should win. But great work also from those pullers, in this case, Claire and Sareveld. Claire, again, continues to improve as a blocker. Probably one of the most underrated stories, even though we try to highlight it here. He stays engaged long enough, pushes him through, and then a nice cutback at the last second for Jackson, actually finishing the run well. This is just a great effort from Ohio State in the run game, and I think schematically, it's the type of adjustment we've been hoping for. A couple weeks ago when I posted my clickbait video that most of you loved, where I talked about this is what's going to cost Ohio State, obviously the execution from the players, but also what was happening schematically. I think we've seen a big improvement in terms of the diversity of scheme. This was an excellent example of that. Greg Schiano, despite the fact that his defense has been statistically underwhelming, you know he's going to have his guys prepared, especially against his former employers, some place he respects. And they're going to be schematically ready. They showed some interesting wrinkles defensively, but ultimately no match for what Ohio State had. And Brian Hartline, Ryan Day, the play caller from the offense, put the offense in a good position to succeed. Something that we need to see on Saturday if the Buckeyes are going to, in fact, break the streak, come home with a victory. Now, flipping to the other side of the ball, because I think this is the difference. Last year, Ohio State's defense absolutely smothered Michigan offensively, allowing just 13 points. Of course, that turned out to be just enough to win. But a lot of that was from some bad turnovers, bad field position. This year, Michigan has certainly improved offensively. Bryce Underwood, of course, is the story, yet they can still run. Now, their running game has been very solid, even without Justice Haynes. Jordan Marshall, the Ohio native, certainly has told everyone how excited he is for this game, despite being a little bit dinged up. Now, the important part for Ohio State, in my opinion, I said this on the Dubcast the other day, is that for Ohio State to win on this side of the ball, it's important to win first down, because getting Michigan behind the sticks, behind schedule, if you will, facing second and long, third and long, and turning Underwood into a drop back passer, that's the way Ohio State's going to win. Now, it's easier said than done, of course. It's going to be about physicality. You wonder what you're going to see from Ohio State from a man versus zone on early downs. Michigan likes to throw a lot of RPOs, make life easier for Underwood, right? Very quick throws, slants, screens, things like that. Because they want to make sure they avoid getting him into these true dropback situations. Now, if they get into that situation, this is what we're going to dig through. Ohio State should feel very confident about their ability to get off the field. Why am I so confident? Okay, how does Ohio State attack Bryce Underwood? What do we mean by that? Well, this is a great example. We call it two-steal concept. We saw Purdue give him a lot of trouble with. You're going to see this blitz from the inside linebacker. He's going to go inside the end. The opposite side, the defensive end, is going to drop into coverage. Now, what we're going to see behind it is a version of cover 2, like a match cover 2, right? The two safeties are dropping, but they're essentially going to play with one less defender. Now, because 17, the tight end, is cutting on a crossing route, that player, that safety isn't, there's nobody left, so he's going to go take him away, and this turns basically into man coverage, but with cover 2 over the top. Now, Underwood sees this, panics, takes off, but the good thing about this type of coverage, you've got a lot of eyes on the quarterback, so he had actually burned them with a couple runs against this coverage when he'd done the exact same thing, but this time they forced him up the middle. He still escapes, which he can do, but he makes a poor decision because there's enough eyes on him. He tries to throw back across his body, makes an ill-advised throw that everyone can see coming, and that's going to result in a pick, right? This is a poor decision-making that you get from freshman quarterbacks who think they can do more than they should. The game sped up for them. A little bit tough for Michigan in that instance. Now, Ohio State, their job is going to be to win these third and longs, right? And it should very much go in the favor of Ohio State. Now, I've seen a few Michigan fans, probably a few little sore Lions fans who still have some hot feelings about Matt Patricia, I would assume, in his tenure in Detroit. You can easily connect those dots here, but also telling us that Ohio State has a pretty simplistic defense. Now, my argument, if you compare it to what Brent Venables did in the Oklahoma game, fair. Brent Venables will throw an entire playbook at you, call something different. He could call something different on every single snap if he wanted to. His idea is to overwhelm you with volume. Not necessarily the same way that Matt Patricia tries to confuse you, but very similar. Now, I wanted to show that two-steal concept because we've not only seen it from Ohio State over the last couple of years, We saw it just this past Saturday. What do I mean here? There's a great example. You can see Jermaine Matthews. He's now had to play in the slot following Lorenzo Styles' injury. He's coming over the slot late. Rutgers is running up to the line. It's a short yardage situation, but they're still going to throw the ball here. They've got bunch formations to either side. Quarterback takes the snap. Now it looks coverage-wise like some version of maybe like a quarter half. You've got like a cover two to the bottom, a quarters to the top, and that's actually kind of what we see, but it's going to be reversed. What do I mean by that? When they drop into coverage, you're going to see Matthews come. He's going to actually end up flipping inside of Atkinson. You're going to get Sonny Styles blitzing. So they've got 5 rushers with 6 guys dropping. But what we see from a coverage perspective that's unique, you can see that same, this is a cover 2, right, where you're essentially playing like a match 3/2 to the top. And then it's more like cover 2 man, where it's man coverage with a safety over the top to the bottom. So slightly different principles from each side. Confuses the quarterback. He's got to turn. He looks, doesn't know where to go, and suddenly the pressure arrives. Now, we watched this is exact same pressure we just saw Purdue successfully run against Bryce Underwood. It's becoming more common, but you can dress it up with who are the 5, right? This instance we see once again, the boundary end and Kenyatta Jackson, he's going to drop off into coverage. He's going to actually even try to jam the slot receiver. But you're going to see the running back, he's looking at the middle linebacker. So this is attacking the protection scheme because he's going after the linebacker, and they've got 2 guys, blocking Styles on this blitz and 3 guys blitzing against 2 on the outside, right? The actual pressure is going to come from the interior from Caden McDonald, who's going to get there because the opposite side, they're picking up the pressure from Matthews. The running back leaves him. So, again, these are the types of things you play games with the protection. Michigan, we saw doing a little bit of that, but we're actually seeing Ohio State do a great job here. We're going to see a few more examples of them attacking the pressure. And when you do that, you make the quarterback, you speed up his clock. And Underwood just ends the state of his development. I'm not saying he can't get there, but as of today, he's speeding up. His footwork isn't quite in sync with where his eyes are, and certainly where those eyes need to be with the routes he's looking to hit. Now, what else can Ohio State do to disrupt that? Well, we're going to see a lot. We saw a lot of coverage disguise in this game from Matt Patricia. Now, this is a good example. We've got the safety in the middle of the field. This just looks like straight man-to-man coverage, doesn't it, right? It looks like we've got a man over a man. You're kind of wondering what's Jaden McClain doing up to the top of the field, or Jalen McClain up to the top of the field, right, the top of the screen. But again, this really just looks like some type of single high. Maybe it's cover 3. But as the play progresses, you're going to see this is what we call it's a variation of cover 2, like a 2 invert, because the deep half player to the top of the screen is the corner. And really, it almost becomes like a bracket, to the top of the screen. We know Rutgers actually has some really good receivers here, and they're going to use McClain and Matthews in this instance to play more like a zone to the top where it's man to the bottom, right? They're basically bracketing that receiver to the top of the screen, 2/1, but then they're playing straight man-to-man to the bottom, but they've got safety help over the top. That safety's not playing in the middle of the field. He's playing a deep half. So the quarterback, he's sitting here back in the pocket going, where am I supposed to go? If I'm trying to read based off of coverage principles, I don't even know which coverage principles I'm following. So I'm going to try to throw it. He actually gets a decent look, but a great play in man coverage from Igbinosun to drop off and make that play. So great effort there from the corner. Now we've got a different look, but they start in the same way. Again, it looks like cover 1 straight across the board, right? This is a man-to-man look. You can see the way that the slot is playing over the nickel. This looks like a straight man-to-man, but as the play progresses, it's a simulated pressure because they had 2 guys, mugged up, and the A-gap will show that, but they're all going to drop into cover 3. So yes, it's a single high look, but it looked like man, and now they're actually going to drop into zone. And what's important is who's dropping into zone, because again, you've got Kenyatta Jackson. This is Caden Curry's great effort, the strip sack, scoop, and score. How is he able to get that? It's the quarterback's holding the ball, looking downfield, going, what am I looking at? But when we look at what he's seeing right in front of him, again, they're attacking the protection, Ohio State is, because you've got these 2 linebackers, these 2 freaks who are lined up on either side of the center. Now, the running back, we just saw a version of it on the previous play. It's his job to take one of them, right? They're going to split the formation. He's going to be looking, if one of those guys blitzes, I have to go take him. I have to help out, and I'm going to let the big on big. I'm going to let the tackles and the guards take the big guys up front. So he goes to help, right? He's helping take away Sonny Styles. Even though there's only 4 guys blitzing, we see 2 of them drop out. Reese and Jackson drop out. So there's only 4 rushers, right? They're dropping 7, but the back goes to help against the pressure, and that leaves the tackle with no help for Caden Curry when he swims outside. A great move, great effort. How he didn't get in the end zone, I'll never know. But again, just a great effort from Ohio State here to create pressure, to create confusion for the offense, both with the quarterback seeing, but also with protection. Why is that protection important? Well, we know Jordan Marshall, he's gonna try to play as their number 1 back, but if he's not able to go, or if they need to rest him because he's nursing an injury, which is known, they're gonna have Kuzdal in there, who's a freshman, right? You're gonna have a young back who has not seen as much. He's gonna be relied upon in pass protection. They've also used Max Bredesen there, their fullback, as a pass protector in clear passing situations. He's out. He may be playing, but he's not going to be at full strength. So again, there's going to be a lot of pressure on whoever that running back is back there for Michigan to help identify and to help execute these pass protection schemes when they hit these third downs, to allow for Michigan to actually give Underwood time, whether that's time to process or time to escape the pocket, right? This is why Ohio State's going to have a big advantage on 3rd and long, and why it's so important to actually get Michigan into those opportunities. Winning first down, being aggressive on first down. You can't give up 4 yards, and now it's 3rd and 2, right? You've got to take away those windows, even if it means giving up a first down here and there. You want to force them into that 3rd down so that you can get off the field. The last clip we're going to show, and I promise this is one of my favorites. We haven't talked a lot about my guy, Caleb Downs, that much. And I wanted to show it because I thought it was a really poetic ending to the game last week, right? At least for him. We've got a similar look here. This is that mugged up. We've got guys in man coverage across the board. We've got a single high safety. Downs is actually over the number 3 receiver, but you can highlight and see there's, again, those 2 linebackers in the A gaps, right? But just timed up perfectly with the snap. You're going to see Downs blitz. Now behind him, they are going to play man coverage, but you're going to see the 2 ends drop out into these robbers. I think this is something we might see this weekend, because you're going to want those guys, whether that's Arvell Reese, Caden Curry, whomever, to be able to be there to take away Underwood. But Downs times it up perfectly and makes the play, waves to the crowd, says goodbye, and perhaps his final snap. Again, we watch it from this view. You can see just how much pressure Ohio State and Matt Patricia are putting on the blocking scheme, because they've got 6 guys up there. There's 5 blockers. The running back's got to help if he's going to stay in pass protection. Now, if he's a receiver, or maybe they change the protection, and that's actually what's going to happen here. They're going to look at this and we're going to say, it didn't work last time. We're not going to have you take the middle. We're actually going to split it, right? We're going to have the center take the linebacker to the left. You're going to take the linebacker to the right. The guard and tackle are going to take the tackle and end to that side. So again, it's a half slide to the left, man on man to the right. But out of nowhere comes number 2, because 20 steps up, takes away Styles, the center takes away Reese. The tackles aren't blocking anybody, and there's nobody left to block Caleb Downs. Now, this only works if you can time it up perfectly, and that's just what a special player Downs is for this team. Very poetic, wave to the crowd. This would be his final snap, most likely his final snap in Ohio Stadium. This is the last snap he played on Senior Day. Just a truly poetic ending. That play is a great example of what a special player he is. Now, Michigan's got their own special player, at least they believe, in Bryce Underwood, and they're going to rely on him to make plays. I believe Ohio State, with Matt Patricia, with his guidance, they're going to be asking a lot of Downs this weekend. They're going to be asking a lot of Arvell Reese, probably Sonny Styles. Now, I think you're going to see 2 making some plays, but regardless, I think it's just worth recognizing what a player like Downs has represented for this defense in recent years. Truly just a magnificent player. You can see it this week. He was named, I think, 4 different award finalist lists: Bednarik, the Lott, the Thorpe, etc. Go on and on. I'm forgetting one. Just a truly special player, somebody that I've always really enjoyed watching here at Film Study. Really made it fun for me to watch. Now, you're worried more about the game, of course. Again, to recap what I think is going to be most important this week, it's going to be if Michigan's in man, being able to take advantage of those. If it's going to be on the ground, Ohio State's got to be able to execute in the run game, and potentially that means getting outside of the run game. We saw that pin and pull toss. And then defensively, it is about winning first down to create these long passing down situations, because when that happens, the advantage clearly swings towards Ohio State. So the more often Ohio State can be in those situations, the more likely they are to get off the field and hand the ball back to their offense. Now, We will be back next week to recap whatever happens this Saturday up in the big house. I'm sure everyone will be tuning in quickly, hoping to find out more. I'll be on the Dubcast Monday night to preview it. But until then, I hope you enjoy, have a happy Thanksgiving, and watch plenty of football between now and Saturday. There's a lot to take in. We will talk to you next week. Thanks a lot.